Good morning, good morning, good morning to all of our beautiful listeners around the world. I want to welcome you again to another edition of This Morning with Soulivity, broadcasting live from our studio right here in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, and on KMET 1490 AM radio in Southern California. My name is Brian Wesley Johnson, and of course, I'm so glad that you're here with us. We've got a great show today. I'm joined today by my very special friends, Sheila Applegate and Candice Harper. Good morning, ladies.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
How are you, both of you, this morning? This fine morning.
I'm good.
Yeah,
What about
it's a
what about
little
you?
rainy in the DMV area, but I'm trying to bring the
Yeah,
sunshine, so I'm not
yeah. Okay.
right.
I love it. I love it. Bring it on, Candy. Um, Listen, we've got a fantastic show, as I said earlier. But before we begin, I want to remind our listeners that listen, you are part of this conversation. We want your thoughts, your comments, your questions. If you're watching us live on Facebook and YouTube, feel free to just post in our live chat. We'll do shout outs, especially if you tell us like where you're listening from, like if you're overseas or here in North America or South America, wherever you are, we want to know. So, um, listen, today is the last day of Black History Month, but of course, Black history lives on because Black history is American history. Um, but we thought it would be appropriate if we ended this month with some truths that may not be known to the broader public about African American history. And so there's this fantastic article that's in the American Civil Liberties Union or the ACLU. They have this great magazine that's online that talk about five truths. We're only going to be able to get to four of them today, but I wanted to kind of go through like at least four of them with my beautiful host and have a conversation about them. Because again, like I said before, these are things that are not as widely known, and even things that maybe you thought you knew, but you didn't know. So maybe there may be some things that are surprising. So let's get into it. The first one that they say is pretty self-evident, in my opinion, where America was founded on white supremacy. Now, I know people get a little touchy about this, but when you look at it in context in the article, which goes, the first slaves arrived here in 1619, which is why you have the 1619 Project by Hannah Nicole Jones. Between 1619 and 1865, Virginia passed more than 130 slave statutes to regulate the ownership of Black people. A 1662 law made all children of enslaved mothers slaves, regardless of the father's race or status, so that rape by white slave masters couldn't create a free child. A 1667 law codified that slaves who converted to Christianity were still slaves. And a 1669 law allowed slaves to be killed for resisting authority. And so this America, which was founded, 150 years, 60 years after the first like Puritans and folks came here, slavery was part of it. It was just innate. So, slavery in America didn't come later, which is, I think, what a lot of people think. And so, my first question to both of you is, do you agree that slavery was founded on white supremacy? And that if you agree, why do you think that the ACLU included this as one of their five? Because they could have chosen a whole lot of different ones. So why? And so I'll go to you, Sheila, first.
Well, I do agree that our government was founded on racism because people were white supremacists back then. They were having slaves. And so if you look at the documentation, it includes that within it, like you just said. And I think 40 of the 56 signers were owning slaves.
Yeah.
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 So I mean, I think it's important for a couple reasons that we understand this, because right today, this is my biggest take on this, is we have originalists in our government moving into the Supreme Court who are straight out saying we want to run the country based on the concepts of the people who founded it in that time. So that's just straight out saying that they are, in my opinion, saying that they're white supremacists and that they want to revert back to that. And so I think that actually embracing and knowing that that is at the core, we can hear that, oh, this is what they mean, and we need to do something about that.
What about you, Candy?
Well, I mean, I always say I have the way I sort of frame it is that it's just this mass mental illness, right? I do believe this country was founded on white supremacy, and it's just mass insanity. And what's always amazing to me, and even today, and Sheila pointed at it, when you think of people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and a lot of the GOP, and you think of a lot of political people who are trying to make America great again, under this guise of something else, small government or whatever they're trying to pretend like it is. It's like, it's always amazing to me how we as a people, I mean, I guess when I think about it, I do believe we are all connected as souls, as energies, but that we can so insidiously and so massively have the same dysfunction, mental illness, the same sort of sickness. And it become such a widespread, it's almost like an epidemic, right?
Right.
And I think that that's what this country is founded on, this epidemic of, it started with, I think, the feudal lords who had to sort of separate, so that there could be an aristocracy. So we are supreme because we are white. And even though you're white, you're incapable of doing certain things. So then we have to set ourselves up as better than. And then it just bled into, now we take slave ownership, and the way to control people is to make them believe that they are inferior.
Absolutely.
And so it's spread like a pandemic.
Right. Right.
It's sick.
Right. And talk about, like, again, I talked about Nicole Hannah-Jones and the 1619 Project, which in part talks about, well, not in part, in a lot of ways talks about the systems that were created. Now, here you have, back in the 17th century here in America, long before the founding documents were even put forth, where laws were made in the form of a Christianity that made it okay for slave owners to enslave Black people, right? Where literally, there's a passage in here that talks about Christian piety, right? That they could claim that as they enslave people, right? And saying, "Oh, no, you're totally in alignment with Jesus," which is completely, to Candy, your part, which is completely insane.
Yeah.
That's not even the youngest person who went to Sunday school could easily see that Jesus didn't espouse slavery.
Yeah.
Right.
He was the exact opposite of that. And then also things like, we were talking about, Black Lives, on another show, we talking about Black Lives Matter. Well, where did modern policing come from? Well, 18th century Georgia required all plantation owners and their white employees to serve in the state militia, which was responsible for enforcing slavery.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's law enforcement, y'all.
Right. It never changed. It just morphed into what we see as police now. There wasn't an ending of that in the beginning of our policing. And that's so important for people to understand.
So they call it the overseer to officer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get it. Oh, the name is escaping me, of the rapper who came up with the lyrics. And he talks about overseer to officer. Like that's
exactly. And And then this continued on until, morphing into, okay, well, the North states, people were free, Black people were free, but then laws came around to allow runaway slaves that would run into those states to be caught and brought back. I mean,
Right.
just when you look at it all in context, then it starts making sense,
Yeah.
Hmm.
right? You can't say, that there's a disconnect, and that all that once Black people were free, then everything was fine and equal. It's like, no, there's a long history of people's psychology that includes systems and institutions that are all around, that are built into this. Sheila, you talked about 40 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence owned slaves, but additionally, 10 of the first 12 presidents also
Right.
owned slaves.
Yeah.
Right. And it was normal. Like
And it was
like you said, Candy said, it's a sickness. Like they just
Mhm.
believed that was okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
Um, I want to just end this segment with each of you kind of talking about, why do we need to know this today? Why is this important today to kind of move, in terms of like, how does this kind of move us forward?
Mhm.
How can we use this information? So Sheila, I'll go to you first.
Well, I think as we were talking, the understanding, we can talk about systemic racism and use that term, but people just kind of look at you with a blank stare because they don't understand what that means and how does that affect us today. But when we go back and put the pieces together, like you said, then we can start to make a difference. We can see that it's systemic, and therefore we have to address it in all different ways, but all together.
I love that. Thank you for that. Candy, what about you?
Well, I mean, there's that old adage, if you don't know your history, or you're doomed to repeat it. Like if you don't know what, has been before you, it's like you're in sort of a sleep state, right? And I
Right,
know that
right.
for whatever reason, I don't know why politically people think it's like an insult to call someone woke. Like
Right. That's a whole nother show.
like like I'm okay if they try, like Matt Gaetz and some of the other whatever pundits of the GOP. Like it's like woke is some sort of insult. It's like, no, waking up to what is so, right? So that we can find wellness, so that we can move forward and have a different experience, a different kind of society. You have to be awake for that.
Right. Exactly.
We don't want to sleepwalk through our time on this earth and just allow ourselves to be sick, right? So, yeah. Call me woke. I'm okay.
Yeah, I so wanted to just call you woke.
Just call us woke. Listen, we're going to continue with this conversation, more truths about African-American history, because this is an important subject. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in about 2 minutes.
Have you ever asked the question, if I was to be anything, what would I be? Regardless of money, regardless of status, beyond popularity and fame. Living your passion, feeling your life has purpose. Solivity is a space to nurture that which lives in all of us. A place where work can become play, and doing what we love creates the dreams of a lifetime.
Are you ready to take that first step towards true, unwavering inner happiness? Are you like thousands of people who have everything they need, not want, but need, and still can't seem to find happiness and fulfillment in their lives? If so, the Steps to Happiness show is for you. On my show, you will learn about the principles and practices that lead to true inner happiness. Because guess what? isn't found in our external environment, but within ourselves instead. Together with my guests, we will explore the latest physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being practices. And together we'll advise you on the actionable steps you can take towards a happier, more fulfilled, authentic life. So I invite you to join me each week on Soulivity TV on the Steps to Happiness show with me, Teresa Greco.
And good morning and welcome back to This Morning with Soulivity. My name is Brian Wesley Johnson. I'm joined again by my beautiful hosts, Candice, Harper, and Sheila Applegate. We're talking about several important truths about Black history from an article from the ACLU. The second truth is one that sometimes it's hard to deal with. And it goes that it's terrorism, even if we refuse to acknowledge it. And what they mean by that is they go into a story which starts the largest terrorism attack in Oklahoma was not at the federal building in Oklahoma City in 1995. It was down the road in Tulsa in 1921. The Greenwood neighborhood of Tulsa, Oklahoma was unique. In the early 20th century, it was referred to as Black Wall Street and was the home to Black and Native Americans who had become wealthy from oil discoveries. Now, there was a massacre there, and this massacre destroyed more than 35 blocks of the city, along with more than 1,200 homes, and left some 300 people dead, mostly Black. 10,000 people were left homeless. Yet this act of domestic terrorism is rarely mentioned or taught in schools. Woo! And just to put this in greater context, this was one of many Black successful cities and neighborhoods across the country. I think there's something like 100 of them that all occurred within a 20 to 50 year span. Mm-hmm. That went through the same kind of thing. What y'all think?
Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
No, I said, what are you guys feeling? What are you guys thinking about?
Well, you know what it makes me think of. We often talk about how coming from oppressed generations, what that means for us, right? Mm-hmm. What that means for us when we are not allowed to build wealth and, build generational wealth and actually experience the American dream. And, that in itself is a type of slow genocide. But I think what people what people often ignore as well, because we're in a capitalistic society, we think that the end goal is to have a lot of wealth. But what they ignore is that there are people, generations of people who came from heritage. Think about the white people who actually destroyed that town, and think about how disconnected they were with their humanity to even be able to do that. And if they're doing that to other people, what they're doing within their own families. And so I think about the people who are descendants from those people. Mm-hmm. And that in itself, it's like it's such a sickness that it doesn't even realize that it's self-suicide as well. Right. Because it kills all of the human spirit. You can't be someone who comes from generations of murderers and not within yourself have all sorts of what's the word I'm looking for? Self-hatred, all sorts of lack of understanding. Like when you're living in that sort of disconnected from humanity kind of paradigm, there is nothing for your soul. I don't care how wealthy you are.
That's I like where you're going with that, Candy, because that's manifesting itself today, right? Yeah. Where you have people that are supporting other people that really are not, and I'm talking politically, that really aren't down for them. Yeah. They just want to keep this fever kind of going, and there's no progress in their lives made.
Yeah, because it's soulless.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm. Right, which is a genocide in itself.
Right.
But it's like a self-inflicted. I think that white supremacy is a self-inflicted genocide. And I don't think, I think that so many are so blind to that, like how destructive it is to your fiber. And you think about all the corruption and the, the scandals and it's very, I don't know what other word to use, but insidious. Like,
Right.
I don't think they even realize how much it affects, and I keep mentioning Matt Gaetz because I think he's such a symbol of this.
Right.
But like, being in trouble for sexualizing young girls and things like that, like all of that is symptoms of generations of being inhumane and coming from that as a heritage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It's
What
sick.
are your thoughts, Sheila?
I think that's a really interesting perspective that, I just think of, because that wealth that they got through that time didn't go away. And those are the people who are in charge of our country and our world right now, right? Because it's, like we said, generational wealth. And I think you can see it in a lot of it, that I mean, nobody's soulless, but that soul disconnect, right?
Yeah.
And there's, how many movies are there about how empty people in those situations are, and the generations coming in are born into this emptiness. And I hadn't thought about it that way. That's a really interesting perspective to explore.
And Tulsa has never been the same since.
Yeah.
Tulsa was a major, I mean, it was bigger than, I would say bigger than Dallas. It was bigger than Houston. It was bigger than, it was growing into be this very central city of the new America, right? Because Tulsa was part of the legacy of, the Trail of Tears and all that. That's why there was Blacks and Native Americans, First Nation people, or I say transplanted First Nation people there, because there was already Native Americans there. But why they were there in the first place, and then they found this oil, and then they were all getting wealthy. And I just think about, what if people had some type of consciousness?
And there were so many prosperous, and Tulsa was one of the main, but there were so many prosperous Black towns that are now underwater, like different areas. I can't, names escape me right now, but different areas where, the towns were just flooded. And there was
figuratively, literally. Yeah.
And there was mass murder. And I think, like, in as much as, I would never want to be anything but Black, right? But I say that knowing that it's because there's a spirit within our culture that is a resilient spirit, that is a unifying spirit, that I think is going to be the thing that heals the world ultimately.
I agree with you. I think that's wow. Yeah, I agree with you on that.
And it's some people will say, well, we shouldn't have to, right?
Right. Exactly.
I always say, like, you can't expect your abuser to be your healer.
Right.
Because they don't have it to do it. You can't expect your oppressor to be your healer, because they don't have it. They're like Sheila said, disconnected from soul, the lack of humanity. They don't have it to do it. They come from generations of hate. Right. So it's those of us who were the oppressed. It's the onus is on us to bring ourselves back to where we need to be. And yes, that we need their participation and allyship. But when it comes to that deep level spirit and healing, we have that. That never went away.
Absolutely. So we're going to, on that note, we're going to take a quick break, and we got more truths to talk about. So let that settle, and we'll be right back. Hey there, this is Brian with Soulivity.com. I want to share some exciting news about our new Aspire Academy by Soulivity. Now, you probably want to know what the Aspire Academy by Solivity is. Well, it exclusively connects you with people around the globe and who share the intense desire to improve themselves and create a better life for themselves today. There's classes, there's workshops, there's live events, and even more exclusively just for you. You see, I wanted you to have a safe space where you could grow, you can learn,
and it would empower you in all aspects of your life, including your mind, your body, and your soul. So how do you get started? Well, it is so easy. First of all, the best part, joining Aspire Academy is absolutely free. Just click on the Join Now button, sign up, and begin your journey. As a special part of this invitation to you, there are some free courses that are available for you to try from our amazing roster of coaches and collaborators. It's our way of saying thank you for all of your support and being with us along our journey of expansion. I hope you enjoyed the Aspire Academy by Soulivity today. Start the process. Learn more about your passion, your purpose, and how to live a higher quality life.
And welcome back to more with This Morning with Soulivity. Listen, we are talking about some truths about Black history that are specifically not widely known. And we've got another one coming up, ladies, where they are talking about a war fought for slavery. Now, all three of us know this, right? Which is about the Civil War. But here's some important information that they put forth from this article where they said research conducted by the Southern Poverty Law Center in 2017 shows that our schools are failing to teach the truth about American enslavement. Only 8% of high school seniors surveyed can identify slavery as the central cause of the Civil War. 2/3 or 68% don't know that it took a constitutional amendment to formally end slavery. That's a doggone shame.
Yeah.
Nice way to put that.
What's even more a shame is that, like, what I was in high school. I'm dating myself. What, 40 years ago?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And I can remember really not being able to grasp the concept. I mean, I went to a predominantly white school,
Right.
and I didn't like. I had it in my mind that slaves were in South America. Maybe that was my own misunderstanding of geography, but like, it really wasn't taught in such a clear way. And the fact that here we are, you know, almost 40 years later, and that we're still up against this.
Right.
Is just ridiculous.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Sheila?
Yeah, it kind of blew my mind a little bit just because we were taught that. I don't know if it's just living in the North, you know, or what, but I do. Aside from, I don't think I could even now identify the exact provisions that, you know, supported the slave owners. But so that kind of surprised me, but it didn't, because recently I've been noticing or realizing this. So the wake up of all the Southern states, or some of the states that were, you know, fighting for slavery, continue to teach that. And I just recently heard someone write into a podcast that I listened to that they grew up, I don't know, maybe in Texas, and they had no idea. Like
Right.
It was shock to them, and they were feeling bad about it. And I'm, you know, so it's a wake up call for me to realize how little people know.
It's the Daughters of the Confederacy that have been in charge of the history books in schools since the Confederate War. Like, they've been in charge, and they have such influence over the bookmakers that they retold the story. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it became this, it's like, I'm trying to remember the documentary that I watched. Maybe it was something with Henry Louis Gates Jr., where they were talking about that almost immediately after the Civil War ended, there was this whole PR campaign that started, where you had like that born movies, like later on, like Gone with the Wind, right? Where slavery was, you know, oh, well, the Civil War was kind of glamorized, you know, as this fight for freedom and you know, states' rights and all this kind of stuff. When
it was part of the family.
Yeah, exactly. Where when you put it all together, in terms of the facts, you start seeing, now, wait a minute, this makes sense that they fought over this. So one key aspect of this that I just want to bring out from this article is by 1860, America had 4 million slaves worth a total of $3 billion in the day's currency. Now, you know me, I went in and started doing some research, and I said, okay, what would $3 billion
Be now.
in like
Yeah.
goods and services look like in terms of today's money, right?
Yeah.
In 2023's money. Well, what I found out was this. It's not a complete, so there's a range because it's not a complete comparison, because you can't just take the money and say, oh, well, these are just products, because these people were also performing services. But the range is somewhere between 4 and 6. You ready? $1 trillion.
Is there any wonder why we're, as a country, trillions of dollars in debt?
There you go.
The
We
energetic,
found it.
right? The energetic implications of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Is there any
Yeah.
wonder on the, on the backs of human beings?
Exactly.
And here we are, trillions in debt.
Exactly. And so when you say, okay, well, these slave owners in the South, if you put it to today, and they had basically trillions of dollars of wealth basically in people, and you're basically asking us to give all that up.
Right.
What do you think they were going to do?
Right.
So just think about that, y'all.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
they were going to do what they did, make the wrong choice, because look at us now.
Exactly. Exactly. They were going to
Right.
choose continuing to keep slavery going because of the sheer amount of wealth that people were asking them to give up. Like, you're telling us that we're going to go broke. Yeah, we got land, but that's not what the wealth is. The wealth was in the slaves.
Right.
Right.
It's such a lesson in humanity, though. I mean,
oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
Money is important, we call it my own natural energy yield, and it is important for having a flow, an exchange in life. But we have such a skewed, as a society, skewed idea of its importance, because it should never have importance over humanity.
Right.
It should never have
Right.
importance over our existence
Exactly.
as human beings and how we connect with each other.
Absolutely. Listen, we're going to take a really, really short break because I really want to give us all some time to kind of talk about this stuff. So we're going to be back in about 30 seconds, y'all.
6 years ago, when I started Soulivity, my vision was to support everyone in improving their life through the discovery of their passion and purpose, so they could become the best version of themselves, to battle fear and ignorance, and create a better world today. Get inspired to live your passion and purpose. Visit Soulivity.com now.
Yeah, come on and visit us at Soulivity.com. You'll have a great, great, great old time with us. We are talking again about some truths about Black history. And the last one that we want to kind of go into, that I'm sure that we're going to have a wider discussion on at some point, is that reparations for slavery have already been paid. Now, I know, to our brothers and sisters out there, you know what I know, and that sounds a little strange, right? Like, wait a minute, I don't know about reparations being paid to Blacks. Well, that's not what it means. It means that on April 16th, 1862, more than 8 months before he issued his Emancipation Proclamation, Abraham Lincoln signed a bill ending slavery in the District of Columbia. It provided for immediate emancipation of slaves and compensation to slave owners loyal to the Union, up to $600 for each freed slave. Over the next 9 months, the Board of Commissioners appointed to administer the act of approved petitions, completely or in part, from former slave owners for the freedom of almost 3,000 former slaves. Lincoln's administration paid about $1 million to slave owners in DC for the loss of property.
Yeah.
Mm. So again, as my old U.S. history teacher would tell me, thank you, Mr. Scott. When you look at people in history, look at their totality. Don't look at like the greatest thing that they've done,
Mhm.
because they're all human. And so when people
Mhm.
talk about Abraham Lincoln and all the great
Right.
things that he did and all this kind of stuff, he was completely down with the government compensating people for them freeing slaves, but that the slaves wouldn't get money.
Yeah.
Right.
They were out on their own. Basically, it's you're transferring slavery into another form of slavery, which a lot of that was like sharecropping
Mhm.
and barter, like food for work and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother subject. But what do you guys think about that? I mean, golly, y'all. Woo!
Well, Candy, you were talking about the energetic impact, and I think that's really important to think about too here. This morning I decided I wanted to look up what the word reparations actually means in the dictionary, and it's making amends for a wrong one has done
Mm.
by paying money to or otherwise helping those who have been wronged. And when you look at it with who they chose to pay,
Mhm.
Right.
the energy of that, not just the money's huge, it's affected us till today, but the energy of like, okay, it's not quite admitting that it wasn't the slave owners that were wronged, right? Like it's kind
Right.
of keeping that subtlety into our consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a great point, Sheila. I mean, again, that's who they defined as, oh, well, we're sorry, we've got to move. We're going to move with um, ending this practice that the whole world has kind of like moved on from, right? Basically, transatlantic slave trade and slavery as a whole. But we feel you. We're sorry that you have to lose your slaves.
Mm.
You're the ones who are actually being wronged here. You helped build this country with this barbaric practice, and you need some compensation to
Yeah.
help get you along.
It just reminds it seems like the same politics that we have today, as far as like maybe Lincoln didn't even believe that they were wronged, but that whole like compromise to get things passed and
Right.
just ending up with
Right.
crap,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Candy. What are you thinking? I can
Well,
see those gears turning.
yeah. I was just thinking about, this whole concept of reparations. It seems that it's as simple as the money we are owed, but I think that inability to come up off of the money that we are culturally owed has a much deeper a much deeper root to it. And I think about, I don't know if you guys know Jane Elliott, who did the Blue-Eyed Brown-Eyed Experience.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I
So
love her.
that, to me, that's the beginning of reparations that would be effective, that would have people able to come up off of the money that is owed and make a big difference as far as, what is created and donated with what is the due of all of us as African Americans.
Right.
It's this willingness to mentally and emotionally begin to truly adjust your thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that has to come first before anybody would pay anything, because we only put money towards things that we care about. And when your mind is so warped that you think that it's the wealth that is the most important thing, and like I said, that's a pandemic disease, you can't even come to that deeper level of understanding that you will have way more than you can imagine once you are willing to understand that it's your energetic reparations that need to happen. I'm willing to let go of this sickness of white supremacy. I'm willing to begin to be a power towards healing rather than part of the machine, rather than thinking that it's got to be strictly about my safety, my survival.
Right.
Right. And when I
Right.
say I do mean, I don't want to make all of anyone a monolith, but white supremacists in general, and that includes way more of us than we think. I mean, there are
Right.
Black people
Right.
who have bought into the white supremacy as well.
Right. Correct.
Right.
Right.
We all have on some level, but it's that ability to look at myself and say, reparations are me beginning to actually change my behavior. And that's, I think, why it's such a difficult thing for people to even fathom. Because when I'm asleep, thinking that my wealth is the most important thing that I will buy and sell people, to get from there to understanding that I'd have to completely change my paradigm is a leap.
Right.
And I think, thank you for that, Candy. I mean, you
Yeah.
both you and Sheila both are just bringing it today. Because listen, I mean, part of this, I think the deeper part of this is the psychology,
Yeah.
the system of psychology that has been put forth and implanted in people to keep them where they are.
Exactly.
And not help move people into empowerment, into awareness, into wholeness, into love, right? Where we've had these wars and all this kind of stuff. I mean, the Civil War, I mean, we're talking about this, right? So the Civil War was over slavery. It was about the economics of slavery and keeping people wealthy by helping them enslave folks. But when that didn't work, because people wanted to succeed, they got rewarded for, okay, well, come on over here, we'll give you some money.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But then more importantly, the system of that these other people are not worthy of your respect, of your time. They are not your equal. They are caricatures, and they will always be known that way.
Yeah.
And has continued all the way to present day, where they don't deserve to be called Americans. They can have this little hyphenated thing, African Americans, right? Because when you say Americans, what do most people think? They think white. They think white people, right? They don't think of blacks as Americans. You have to put a hyphen on the front, and that's with most minorities. And so, this psychology thing, breaking that, having some truth and reconciliation, like in part like they had in South Africa, but it's a little different, but having it at a deeper level. Listen, we're a little bit over time. I'm going to take a quick break, and we're going to continue this on the other side.
All right. Hi there, Sheila Applegate here with some exciting news. I've joined the incredible Soulivity team as the host of the new Consciously Awesome live show, where I will be sharing insights to help you discover your full brilliance and claim the vibrant life you deserve. So tune in every Wednesday right here on Soulivity TV to join the fun, and remember to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss a single episode. Have an awesome week, and I will see you on Wednesday.
Have you ever asked the question, if I was to be anything, what would I be? Regardless of money, regardless of status, beyond popularity and fame. Living your passion, feeling your life has purpose. Solivity is a space to nurture that which lives in all of us. A place where work can become play, and doing what we love creates the dreams of a lifetime.
And welcome back to This Morning with Soulivity. My name is Brian Johnson, and I'm hope that you're enjoying this conversation today with my co-hosts Candice, Harper, and Sheila Applegate. I mean, this is some powerful stuff, y'all. A lot
Yeah.
of stuff is hard to hear. Just saying that I need a drink after this. Yeah, I don't care if it's
5 o'clock
8:45.
somewhere.
Yeah, hey, give me a drink.
It's a big
Listen,
time.
why don't we move into some final thoughts about this? Yeah, and I'll let you both decide who's gonna go first. Sheila, Candice, final thoughts.
I want to give Sheila.
Well, I would say, thinking of what you said, Candice, earlier about how we have to change at the core in our perception, and that is where we need to start. And as you were saying that, I was just thinking, coming from the perspective of a white person, how important it is for us to realize that even if we think that we're not racist, we were born into a racist society. And so we are benefiting from white supremacy, and it's such a natural part of our lives that we don't see it. So even if we have to work hard to become anti-racist, we have to put the effort in, because it's ingrained in us in a way that isn't conscious. And so we have to work hard to make it conscious and release it.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. And I also think too, it's like we're so afraid to admit when we're wrong as people, right? And so that willingness to own what you're saying, Sheila, that it's ingrained in us, even those of us who've been oppressed by it. But if you're someone who's grown up in a white family, you might be completely blind to how it's been embedded into your psyche, your system. And I think that's why a lot of times people get so offended if you say, I'm not racist, I have a Black friend. But the reason that energy is so, right, that energy is so high is because it's like, I'm thinking of it like it's something that I cannot own. It's almost like I'm not even willing to open myself up to it, because then I have to start this journey of making myself wrong.
Right.
And that's the last thing we all want to do as humans, is make ourselves wrong. But that is the only place to find healing. That ability to just stand in what I've done, who I am, what my family has done, what is the truth, and just be with that, and then go forward saying, I'm going to declare something new. When we're unable to say, I've been doing it wrong, or what I was taught was wrong, and my behavior, even though I didn't think it was racist, I'm now realizing that it is. There's nothing more noble than that ability to face our demons, and that ability to say, just because what was doesn't mean that's who I have to be going forward. I don't have to stand on that I'm right no matter what, because that will destroy the society.
Mm-hmm. Wow. You can just end right here. I think my thoughts are kind of a blend of what both of you have beautifully stated. I think about what I was just kind of thinking about was, our white brothers and sisters who may not have come into awareness yet around the truth of how our country was founded, and the systems that were put in place, and the psychology that we kind of talked about in the last segment. I would ask them to start here in this moment. Have you thought about, have you embodied or had thought about people of color in a certain way? Or have you thought about them at all? And if that is true, that psychology is there for you, then that's also true for yourself. That there are things about the what of who you are as a American living in America that have been taught to you and put forth on you to socialize you to believe a certain thing about who you are, as well as what you think about other people. So if you've ever said things like, this black on black crime has to stop, but don't understand and have not done your research that the majority of crime that's committed in any race is by that same race, right? Or just like today, we're Representative Jim Clyburn is introducing a bill in Congress to finally have the ancestors of people who were black people who were supposed to get the GI Bill
Right.
money to finally get that. Well, did you know that they never got any of that money? My uncles, my granduncles who fought valiantly in World War II, in some of the most important battles of World War II, where many of their brothers died, they didn't get a dime.
Mm-hmm.
So just think about that when you're talking about, well, why don't black people have more money? Why don't they have more wealth? They just didn't pull their bootstraps up. Just think about that. Think
Right.
about those things. and understand that is being taught to you by someone, and that is not the full and whole truth. So just question, be curious, learn. Don't put it on the other people for information. You go out and get the information yourself, get from trusted sources. And like both of you have said, kind of move on and expand and grow, which this is all about.
Right.
Mhm.
Anyway, while we got some time left, thank you for that, by the way. Candy, you've got some cool things coming up that you wanted to share. Tell us a little bit about that.
So yeah, I'm opening up this big project that I'm qualifying it as big. I'm gonna make it big.
All right.
But it's this project that I'm working on. It's a nonprofit project that is specifically for. I'm creating a compilation book for BIPOC plus women to talk about our relationship experiences with home, whether funny, irreverent, whether struggling or tumultuous. I'm compiling stories right now. I'm asking people to go to bit.ly/The Home Project, capital T, The Home Project, because I'm writing a book, and the book is going to be titled "It's Homey." Yo, stay, sis.
Yay.
And it's going to be all about, right? It's going to be all about Black women's stories around home. Whether fun or traumatic. And yeah, right now I'm in the stage of just inviting people to submit applications. Ultimately, any proceeds from the project are going to go to programs that help women of color, youth at risk to find stability and shelter and home, and all the contributors. So the contributors will also get a percentage of whatever proceeds come from the project. But that's what I'm working on right now. So hopefully people will come to that link and check out the information.
Of course they will. And Sheila, really quick.
Well, I'm offering a special discount for people on Soulivity, and you can see the link right there. And that's for a soul connection session. So if you want to have a deeper connection with your soul and maybe heal some of the disconnect, then check that out.
Yay. Well, fantastic show, ladies. Powerful show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope people enjoyed it as well. I think I'll say thank you to both of you once again. And thank you to all of you out there that are listening. This is what this morning with Soulivity is all about. It's about real conversations that empower, even when it's difficult to talk about different things. And so we want to have these conversations so that you can move forward with your life and create a higher lifestyle for yourself, not just monetarily, but your holistic life, emotionally, mentally, intellectually. And so you attract into yourself that best life today. So again, we hope that you come back. especially like tomorrow, or every weekday at 8 a.m. Eastern for our live broadcast, or you can listen at 9 a.m. Pacific on Thursdays and Fridays on KMET 1490 AM for all of you out on the West Coast. Until next time, keep on having real conversations with passion and power, and create a life full of high quality living today. We'll see you next time. Bye.
This work is subject to copyright owned by Affinity Global LLC. Any reproduction or republication of all or part of this is expressly prohibited unless Affinity Global LLC has explicitly granted its prior written consent. All other rights reserved.